The ability to speak with confidence and present for impact is easily the most valuable skill you can have in today's world. When you can share your knowledge, you can facilitate change, and when you can facilitate change, well, you can change the world one conversation at a time. But most people think they can't speak articulately, confidently, or with impact. They get choked up by nerves, they lose their words, or that dreaded imposter syndrome shuts them down. Well, I'm happy to say that speaking is a skill that anyone can learn, yes, even you. And that's exactly what this podcast is all about. My name is Kat Matson, and welcome to Speaking with Confidence. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Speaking with Confidence with Kat Matson. Yes, that is me, and it is awesome to have you here. How is your day going? Please, look, I know that you are listening while you are doing something else. And with any luck, you're listening while you do not have your phone in your hand. But I'd love to hear from you. So maybe head over to my Instagram, @KatMatson, that's Kat with a C, and just, take a screenshot of this episode perhaps and say, I'm listening, loving it, hating it, found it interesting, whatever. But most importantly, let me know, how are you? What's happening in your world? One of the fascinating things about podcasting is that unless it's talkback radio, it's kind of like it's just a very one-way conversation. So I would love to know how you are. Today's conversation, I reckon, is probably the epitome of why I do this work. My guest is an accidental professional speaker. She's actually a scientist. In fact, you're going to hear in the interview shortly that she is a food nutrition scientist, and she accidentally found herself on the public speaking circuit because she is remarkably good at translating knowledge into information that her audience can do something with. Essentially transferring knowledge so that it can be power. And what I love about this conversation is this is why I do what I do. It is working with technical experts, people who want to make a bigger impact in the world, helping them to use their voice to make a bigger impact. And that's what you're going to hear in this conversation. So my guest today is Dr. Anneline Padayachee, and you're going to get taken into the most gorgeous adventure, rabbit hole of food nutrition, food science, food supply chain, and what Anneline is doing to really bridge the gap between our understanding of where nutrition starts and how we can maximize nutrition in a very modern, non-primary producer world. We're no longer producing our own food, we're buying it. How does that work, and how do we maximize the nutrition? So enjoy the very different conversation, and I will see you at the other end of this interview with Dr. Anneline Padayachee. Anneline, welcome to the Speaking with Confidence podcast. I am so stoked to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Kat. I'm really excited to be on this with you too.
So I've just attempted to introduce you before you came on to the recording and explain to listeners what it is that you do. But can you tell us in your words, who are you and what do you do?
Okay, so my name is Anneline Padayachee. I am a nutritional food scientist, and I'm kind of like smack in between the science of food and the science of nutrition and nutrients. So for most people, if you are a food scientist per se, you probably end up working in the food industry, new product development, everything from creating formulas for chocolate bars to creating the processes for food safety and making sure that cross-contamination doesn't occur and things like that. So there's a lot of sciencey people who work in the food industry, but then you have the nutrition side of things, and the people who usually are the experts in nutrition end up going down the dietetics direction. And dietitians are more clinicians per se. They have got a much deeper clinical knowledge. So, working with populations who've got a disease, who've got cancer, or some sort of chronic health condition that needs medical treatment and dietary treatment as well. Or it could be athletes who have elite nutritional needs. And then there's me, who sits right in the middle of both. So I am an expert in nutrients and also in components in food. So you've got to realize none of us sits down and eats a plate of nutrients. Like you don't sit and eat a pile of pills and powder of vitamin C and a pile of protein and things like that. We eat food, but food is our primary source of nutrients. And so as a nutritional food scientist, my expertise lies in understanding how processing, both on farm, so growing, producing dairy or fresh produce in snowy environments versus doing it in the tropics. How does those environmental differences affect the nutritional properties of the foods we're producing on farm? Moving further up the line, what processing techniques are we using in the food industry that can decrease nutritional properties or conversely improve our body's ability to absorb, decrease waste, improve shelf life, but also make foods affordable to everyone, everywhere. So yeah, I'm across a lot of different things.
You really are. And that feels like a pretty big remit. Before we get into what you find important now, how did you get there? Like, did you kind of sit there and look at your plate of food as a teenager and go, this is fascinating? Like, how did you end up in this pretty unique space?
I Great question. I really I struggled in school because like either you're really good at the arts and English and all those sort of creative sides, those sort of things, or the languages, or you're really good at science and maths. And I scored grades equal across everything. So I couldn't really work out what I genuinely wanted to do. I wanted to be an artist for a while until I think I was in year 11 when I worked out that most artists are successful after they die. So that wasn't an option.
True.
I wanted to be a journalist. I love writing and I absolutely love history. But it just felt that journalists say a lot of sad stories, and I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news every single day of the week. And then I did this subject, and it was just like I thought maybe I'd want to be a chef because, you know, it's a bit creative, but then they work weekends and night times and on holidays, and you know, I'm not that dedicated to the cause. But then we did a component of food chemistry. And it was like, oh my gosh, for the first time, science made sense. Like I like science and I do really well at it, but I couldn't see a point in understanding the physics of this and the entropy of that. Like, what do I need to know this for? But when I did food chemistry, oh, light bulb moment. Everything made sense. It was so easy. I didn't actually need to study hard. It just made sense in my head. And you got to eat it. So we were using science to create all these different foods. So it was artistic, it was creative. There was the textural properties, and you also needed at times some of our assignments looked at, you know, the culture where these different cuisines have come from. So it had that human element to it. I went and did some work experience with a dietitian. Sort of, kind of. Well, I was in hospital anyway because I had a back injury from basketball. And while I was there, I just tagged along behind a dietitian because I was so bored and just watching what she did. And I could see the value in it, you know, going to these different wards, seeing people who've had open heart surgery or bypass surgery, and I understanding like this is a problem. There's, you know, been huge clogs and blockages in their heart cardiovascular system. And so now they are forced to take all this medication and they're forced to eat this diet, and it just felt so depressing seeing them eat steamed chicken and steamed fish and broccoli all the time. Like it, food had lost pleasure. It was just, I have to eat this just to stay alive. Um, so in my head, it was like, well, why don't we just prevent people from getting sick? Like, how about that? Let's just change the food supply. Super easy, and then we fixed the problem. And so I went and did some
Super
work.
easy.
Very naive as well, but very altruistic motivation. I just thought, yeah, this is simple. So I did work experience with a food technologist, and the project she was working on was bringing Wendy's chocolate topping to Australia without the actual formula. So we had to work backwards. So you got a jar of Wendy's chocolate topping, and then we actually had to work out the chemistry in order to understand what
Wow.
ingredients to use. And it was the coolest thing ever. Like, and create the machinery. So working with the engineering department to create the machinery to create tons of chocolate topping in mass from like a little 100 ml sample to a 10-ton mix. Oh, it was just the best thing. I was like the happiest. I didn't want to go back to school. And that's how I started. I did a
For people.
degree in food science and nutrition at the University of Queensland. I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted to go down that dietetics path because I was very convinced that nutrition is important, but food science seems to be way more fun. And so I thought maybe I might want to go down and become a food technologist, or I might want to become a dietitian. So I chose a degree that gave me two options. I never went into either one of the options. Yeah, I
Well, I
just
was going to
stayed in that.
say, for those who aren't watching, for those who are just listening, you should see Annaline's face when she's talking about how exciting it was to reverse engineer the Wendy's chocolate topping. Like, it was just like, oh my goodness, this is so much fun. You, we're going to talk about your speaking career in a second because that's part of the reason why we connected and why you're here. But what's your core business now? Like, what do you, how do you merge those two sides, and where, I mean, I can personally see the value of this, but how is it kind of, I feel like you've crafted your own career. Would that be correct?
Yeah, definitely. For me, it just made sense that we eat food, not nutrients, but food is our primary source of nutrition. So the food industry and the food supply really need to understand nutrition and nutrition science, and the nutrition dietetics world need to work with the food supply. For a long time, public health and dietetics and nutrition has been very anti the food industry. And I can understand why. We've got chronic health conditions. But to blanket brush the whole food industry because of the nutritional properties of marshmallows and lollies is, in my opinion, it's very simplistic and it's erroneous. We will never go back to an era where we have Daisy the cow in our backyard and grinding grains to make homemade bread. We'll never go back to that. Too many people, like, we've got busy lives, people live in apartment buildings. So we need the food supply. We actually need it, it's essential. How that food supply works, though, also needs to up its game to consider long-term impact, nutritional properties, environmental impact, all those sort of things, while still maintaining a healthy diet that consumers have the right to choose. And that's, to me, that's absolutely fundamental. We've all got free will, and imposing belief systems takes that free will away. So you have the right to choose. Like, I truthfully couldn't care less if someone ate sugared bark off a tree. If that's what you want to do, that floats your boat, go for it. But it is important to be able to make an informed decision. And if you're going to make that informed decision to eat sugar-coated tree bark, know what you're eating, know the impact it has on your digestive tract, know how you're going to, or in this case, probably not, really absorb much nutrition. Know what it actually is going to do for your health. And to me, that's critical. Yeah.
Yeah. So just so our listeners can kind of picture where you do, who do you spend your time with? Who do you consult to? Who do you serve in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, it's really evolved, hey? For whatever weird and wonderful reason, primary producers love me. And I love them. I love learning about what they do. I do not have a farming background at all. Oh, that's not entirely true. I think like my great grandparents were farmers, sugarcane farmers, but that like I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I didn't meet them, so definitely ended a long time ago. Um, so I don't have that farming background. I'm a city person, 100%. But even for farmers to understand, like, yeah, you're producing that wheat, or you're producing that, 10 tons of potatoes, or you're doing beef, you're doing avocados, you're doing wagyu. What are those nutritional properties? That leaves your gate. What are you actually doing? Nutrition starts on farm. So helping them to understand, they have a lot of pressures that are coming onto them. And in Australia, I'll be honest, Australia has been dealing with climate change before climate change was officially a thing, just purely because of the nature of this country.
Mm-hmm.
It's so dry, it's so hot.
Yep.
We have floods and fires all at the same time. So we're a great case study for the whole world to look at. And we've been doing it for a long time. So farmers in Australia are much more ahead of the curve than a lot of other places in the world because they have to be. So we're taking it the next step. That's cool that you're doing all this stuff. You're looking for environmental longevity. What impact is that having on nutritional properties? It could be improving it. Maybe there's something else you could be doing that could be enhancing that nutritional composition in those crops, in those animals, in that dairy products, whatever it is. I consult to industry bodies or organizations, and they seem to be, really, I mean, that's where the policymakers are. That's the guys who, like your peak bodies, your industry bodies, they've got a lot of memberships. And so those private companies take that information away and they can actually do practical things with it. And then, and then universities as well. So I used to be an academic in uni all the time. Now I float across a few different universities and help them to articulate, help them to see especially when we're doing the nutrition research side of things, helping them to understand it's not good enough to do research that says there's 20 grams of protein in this cultured meat burger patty. How much can we actually absorb? That's what we need to be focusing research on. Helping them to think a bit differently. I guess, in essence, I'm a soundboard. I was told the other day that I'm a thought leader, so I make people think, so that's not a bad thing. A lot of that.
And I particularly like that you are speaking to all of those different elements of the supply chain around the modern day realities of food and food production and how that ends up in the hands of the consumer. And I do really want to loop back to that point that you made around, yes, wouldn't it be awesome if we still had Daisy the cow in the backyard and we were farming our own produce, etc. But we're not. And we're never going back to that. Certainly not in the foreseeable future. And so understanding what we do have, I think, is so powerful. Now, we met because you rocked up to an event that I was hosting, teaching people how to speak with impact. And you said to me at the end, you said, oh my goodness, now I know how it is that I do what it is that I do, because you've developed this really interesting speaking career almost by accident.
Yeah.
You now speak at massive conferences. Not necessarily that you sought out, it just happened, and now you've got the reputation for it. How important to your cause, to your personal and professional mission, has speaking been?
Oh, fundamental. Yeah. It's at the heart of it. So I absolutely believe knowledge is power. And I think when I love research and I love being involved hands-on in research, but I guess I never had a normal academic career path. I did my undergrad and my honors degree, which was actually in epidemiology. And I had a job lined up as an epidemiologist in Queensland Health, and I turned my back on that to go be a food scientist in the food industry. Curiosity drives me a lot most of the time, and so working in the food industry, I've discovered a problem which I got hung up on, and that's how I ended up doing my PhD based on that. But it was very much so a solving a problem that the food industry in Australia and around the world will be able to use. I
Mm-hmm.
found that that was not the trajectory of most academics. So they usually did undergrad, honors, masters, PhD, and then they stayed on in academia. And it was a struggle for me because I kept asking the question, so who's using this? And where's industry? How come they're not sitting here at the table? And like we've got to commercialize this. A journal article is great, but if no one can use it, what's the point? So there is some relevance to that traditional way of doing research, but I guess because I've always been practical and I've been in industry, it didn't make sense to me. And I realized pretty soon that there's not enough of people with these critical thinking skills. So to me, a PhD is just an apprenticeship in really hardcore critical thinking skills. It's an apprenticeship in how to do research properly. It doesn't make me an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I need to take those skills and now apply it and gain more knowledge and if I use it for good, wisdom to gain that expertise. So I just thought, well, there's not enough PhDs who work in the real world in Australia. In the USA, it's totally different. It's like 80% of
Mm-hmm.
PhDs graduates, they actually end up back in industry. So they're very focused on research for commercialization, whereas it's the complete opposite here. Most of the
Yeah.
PhDs actually stay in academia. Um, and I was like, well, there's plenty of those people here, as much as I love it. There's not enough of us in the real world. So let's go back into the real world. So I ended up working in a few
And
different roles after academia and innovation communication roles, like helping to translate science basically. And my last
mm,
job as an employee was senior scientific and regulatory counsel for a pharmaceutical company. And my group was looking after nutrition products in Australia, medical nutrition products, so infant formula, premi formula. We were starting to play around with products for the elderly who can't chew, so special nutritional products for
mm-hmm.
them. And so, yeah, my role was very much, it was definitely the hardest scientific role I've ever done. It was harder than my PhD, to be honest. I used those skills a lot more because you can kill people if you don't get your science right.
Yep.
So, pulling on those skills to create products that were very scientific in nature. But in doing that, I also started realizing like, this is cool that this company has me here. Most places don't. They don't
Yep.
have an Anneline. They don't have someone with this skill set. So yeah, then I hit a redundancy after my division got sold. Decided I didn't want to be a technical salesperson because I don't know how to sell things. Ironically, though, that's what I seem to do. I sell nutrition.
I
And
was
so
going to
yeah,
say, she says,
yeah, and so off the back of that, I I got invited to host a TV show, just an episode.
oh my
Um,
goodness.
and it kind of like just went a little bit crazy after that, in terms of can you come speak at our conference? Can you come speak at this event? And yeah, I didn't even know people got paid to speak. It was all a foreign world for me. Yeah.
Tell me, so this TV show, I'm curious, don't want to go down the rabbit hole of what the TV show was, but if you'd never been a speaker before, how did you front a TV show about food science? How were you given scripts or did you rely on your own ability to translate? How did that work?
Yeah, so the TV show was called Entrepreneurs, and you can still watch it. Like it was on Foxtel, and so it went for like quite a while. But I was just hosting this one special episode, which was all about the future of food. And so
Right.
there was a script written, like there was the three experts that were being interviewed, and three or four, and me. And I was also the main expert pulling it all together. But I could go through with the script writer and, ask them, well, actually, no, I think we should be asking this question. And this is how I think this should be linked this way. So they use my expertise as a nutrition food scientist a lot to create that episode. But I think being able to present, so the producer of that show, she'd seen me somewhere else and she was like, wow,
Right.
yeah, she's really smart. She knows really complicated stuff, but she uses super simple layman's terms, perfect for a 45-minute TV show. So that's kind of how it
And I
happened. Yeah.
think right there is the nugget of this entire discussion. She's really smart. She knows really complicated things, and she can translate it and present it in a way that everyday people can understand.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you don't put
So,
yourself out there, no one knows you. But simultaneously, you shouldn't just put yourself out there because you want to get known. That was never my motivation. It was always just to help people make informed decisions. And it still is. That's the only thing that drives me.
well, and you said earlier, that it's knowledge is power. So you've got this knowledge and you're wanting to share that with relevant people in the supply chain in a way that makes sense to them. So tell us, you accidentally ended up speaking, earning money, earning money from speaking. Isn't it glorious? But if you hadn't been trained in how to do that, but you've accidentally landed in it, what has been what have been the things that you focus on when you accept, well, not when you accept, when you deliver a presentation? What do you focus on so that you're actually translating that knowledge into power for your audience?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kat. I was asked that same question 2012, I think it was, by the chief scientist of Queensland. And I was competing in a competition. I didn't actually put my hand up for it. My PhD supervisor put me up for this comp. And I only did it out of respect for him, not because I wanted to do it. And I had this interview, and it was a science communication competition. So I was named Australia's #1 science communicator for 2012. And the chief scientist of Queensland asked me the same question, like, how do you do this, Anneline? What's going on in your head? Tell us what's happening in there. And I said to her, I'm like, well, I love what I like. I mean, you like understanding the digestive tract is extremely complicated. The gut microbiome is our newest organ, and it is a really complicated colony of families. Like it's hardcore. When I talk to people who are outside of the food space, even within the food and nutrition space, it has to be relatable. Like, there's no point in me talking to you about the anionic compounds in pectin or the neutrality of cellulose. That means absolutely nothing to you. But understanding that cellulose cleans your bowels out, it's a great bowel scourer, whereas pectin actually turns into jelly and is absorbed into your bloodstream and acts like a sponge and just absorbs cholesterol and spits it out in your poop. Like, so you get that. So it has to be relatable.
I do.
That's the whole point. It is not about my level of intelligence. It's not about if you cannot explain something that's complicated in a way that people understand it, you don't understand that complicated concept yourself. So to me, that's what goes on in my head. How do I make this information relatable using what is happening in the world we live in? So you understand what a scourer is. You understand what a sponge is. Those are easy to identify, relatable concepts. And so I pull those things into how I communicate. And
I
that's kind
freaking
of
love it.
always been the way, even like to create new products and baby formula or premie formula, explaining nutrition to neonatologists and pediatricians. You've got to speak in the language of your audience, what resonates with them. It's the same content. I can talk to farmers and I can talk to pediatricians, but the phraseology is different.
So many questions. Why? I couldn't agree more. And I think that was one of the things that had us click when we first met. You said, "Oh my goodness, this is exactly what I've been doing," and I didn't realize that's what
Yeah.
that you've got a framework for it. Why do you think it's so hard though for other technical experts to see that? Why do we get stuck in using our own language or using our own, like not translating it for the audience?
I think when you're in a silo and you're surrounded by everybody else who talks the same language, understands the same concepts, you're kind of like in this little echo chamber. And it becomes so normal. And so in like academia and scientists, they know they need to start interacting with the broader community. They've got to get funding from industry. There's not much funding from the government, so you got to go a bit bigger than that. And industry wants things that they can use. So you've got to speak in their terminology. But when it becomes your norm to speak to only people who think like you, it becomes almost your default setting, I think.
Yeah.
And
And I
that's
think,
not necessarily healthy. You've got to get out of your bubble and articulate it. You just have to. You've got to think, okay, who's going to use this information further upstream or further downstream? And what are the challenges that they face to my information? How do I help them to understand what I'm trying to articulate? What comes out of my mouth and what is heard can be two very different things. So I've got to try and think, what's those ears hearing? What are those ears picking up? What do I want them to pick up versus what are they actually picking up? And then try and articulate what I want them to pick up. Yeah.
I just want to call out that piece around what you're saying is not necessarily what's being heard, and
Yeah.
taking the time to really ask yourself, is what I'm saying going to resonate? Is it going to connect? Is it going to be understood? In fact, I'm going to take back that word resonate, because sometimes it's not even about resonating. It's like sometimes, particularly in the world that you're in, you're communicating what can be confronting and uncomfortable information.
Yeah.
So it's not about resonating, but you need your audience to get it, to go, "Oh, we understand."
Yeah. 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 It's interesting this week, last week, I was just at a conference as a attendee, and I was in the bathroom, and as I spoke to this lady, and she actually remembered me. She heard me speak at a conference 2.5 years ago. I don't remember her at all. I think there was 1,500 people at this event. And she was like, "I know you." I'm like, "Oh, really? Where did we meet?" And she goes, "We haven't, but I heard you speak and you said this, and this." And I was like, "I don't remember saying it. It sounds like something I would say. Okay, that's cool. Where was this?" I didn't even remember the event. And like, I've gone back and had a look, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, she was right. That's true. I did speak at that event." But what she said, it sounded like stuff that I would say 100%. But what she said, she actually, if it was me, and now I do believe her, it was me. She was all right. Like, she got it. She understood it. The key take-home messages. And in the last 2.5 years in her role in the meat industry, she has been trying to implement some strategies to bring food nutrition further up in its value proposition. And I was like, wow, oh my gosh. Like, you work in an abattoir and you got it. That's what you're after. It's not about how smart I am. It's not about what I have to say. It's about what the audience can use.
So you are a thought leader. You said something, somebody took it home, and she's been working with it ever since. She's been
Yeah.
working with it for 2 years because of something that you said. That is the definition of a thought leader. That is awesome. Um, so I've got two quick questions to wrap up because I could have this conversation with you all day, but I'm quite sure that our listeners have got other things to do. First thing, what have you done over your speaking career to consciously develop your speaking skills? Have you gone out and sought professional training? Have you learnt on the job? What have you done to develop your speaking skills?
One of the first things I learned a very long time ago, I think it was first year of my PhD, so we're going back to 2008. There was this really cool professor. He'd already done two PhDs and he was doing his third. Can you believe it? One of those professors who never
No.
retire. And he said to me, he goes, Anneline, one of the things you should always do wherever you go to conferences, lectures, you're going to meet people, you're going to hear people that are boring. And I was like, oh, that's my university experience so far. Yes. He goes, take away, if it's really hard for you to concentrate, there's two things you need to do to stay focused. And the first thing is think about what is at least one thing that you've learned from their whole presentation, just one thing. And so that kind of makes you stay focused to just picking out that one little thing. And the second thing is if you could say their presentation, what would you do differently? And you only need to do pick one good thing that you learned from them and one thing that you would do differently. And like, in all honesty, I use that skill, I use that thought process everywhere I go. And so it does make me stay motivated in the driest of presentations, but there is always something you can learn from everyone. And everyone, even the not so great presenters who are not articulate, they've always got something really good that you can pick up on. So I use that. I did I won that competition, Fresh Science, and we had a week of like communication training with like journalists and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But that was way back 2011. I think for me, a lot of it's been on the job. Like I have to talk to farmers, people who work in abattoirs, managing directors, politicians, like the whole gamut, medical doctors. You really need to understand your audience. So I always embed myself in their world, even if that means sitting on a stool in the corner of Woolies and just observing consumers and how they buy things, and the conversations they're having with their kids or their partner or whatever. Like I observe, I want to get into their head. I want to see the world through their eyes, so that I can craft my presentation so that it's useful for them. And that might mean spending time on farm or visiting hospitals and just being a little shadow and following. So I use that as well. And then the third thing is I'm always open to learning. So I came to that course and it's really funny because like, yes, I do. I do get paid. I travel around the world speaking. And to me, there's always something new I can learn, even if it's like one little teeny tiny tidbit. One little teeny tiny tidbit is going to make me just that much better. So I'm always open to learning and being open to other people's experiences. Yeah, so that's probably the three things that I've done. And I will be honest, I have started
Love it.
doing. This is like Kat has not asked me to say this, but I have started doing Kat's online course because when I heard you do your presentation, it's very hard for me to. It's very hard to get me to, I don't know, think. I see a lot of people speak. Put it that way. I see a lot of people speak. So it's very hard to impress me on the really good articulate presenters out there. And when I heard you speak, I was like, oh my gosh, I could listen to you for 10 hours straight. And you make sense of what's going on in my brain because I can't articulate what I do so well. And yet you did it. And so I'm doing your course and I'm slowly getting through it. And it is being very invaluable. If anything, it's just helping me to understand what I do
Thank you.
better. And that is knowledge is power. And if you know yourself better, you can speak better.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And thank you. It's lovely to hear. And I do find it fascinating that you have been able to do so much of what you've done purely by practice, and you're so masterful at it. And what I want to call out for listeners is it is in like how you get better at speaking is by speaking. Like
Yeah.
you just hit another stage and you do it again, but you focus on the audience. It's not about you, it's about them. And I feel like I bang on about that ad nauseum. So as we wrap, Anneline, what would be your number one tip for our listeners when it comes to speaking? What would be your number one speaking tip?
Listen to yourself. Um, if you can record yourself, or if there is someone who's doing a recording, if you can get a copy of that video recording, that audio recording, or just set your phone up on the side and record yourself when you're delivering your presentation, do it. I hear a lot of people who say they don't like to listen to themselves. It sounds weird to hear myself, or it sounds weird to hear myself on the radio. Like, put your ego aside. Put yourself in the seat of your audience and listen to yourself. That is the only way you're going to hear what everybody else is hearing. And so when you hear that, yeah, I am my own best critic. I'm my worst critic. I'm my harshest critic. But I will always, I listen with two things in mind. What do I do really well? I've had to train myself to do that. Like, yeah, I really like that. Anneline, you nail that. Your body language, your stance, your pausing, top, good effort. That concept, yeah, that might have been, you might have brushed over that a little bit too fast or something like that. So I listen to critique myself, both good feedback and what can I do better. So always listen to yourself. And the second one is when you're a technical, scientific presenter, engineer, whatever you may be, if you can articulate your content to the intelligence level of a 12-year-old, you've nailed it. So there have been times, I don't have any 12-year-olds in my world, unfortunately. So the next best thing is to find a person in the general public who has got, a bit more curiosity, is not an expert in your space, is somewhat smart, and do it to them. So I have used my mum and dad pretty much my entire life. And they're great. And they give me great feedback. The questions that they ask, that's what I'm really after. Whatever concept it may be about the gut microbiome or digestibility. And then my dad will ask me a question like, so does that mean I have to chew my food 15 times? That means he didn't understand what I was saying. Right. Got it. How do I make this more clearer? That's what I'm after. So practice beforehand, test your content, listen to yourself. I am very fortunate that recently I actually had a 12-year-old in the audience, which threw me by surprise. And we had a great chat afterwards. And this little boy, he got it so well. I'm like, what did you like about it? And he was like, this and this and this and this. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this works. If a 12-year-old can get it, anybody else can get it.
And I want to call out there, particularly given that you're a scientist, speaking so it can be understood by a 12-year-old is not about dumbing it down.
No.
It's about making it clear. And I think this is one of the things I hear a lot of people who go, oh, I'm not willing to dumb it down for people who can't understand. It's like, no. What is the point of you? What is the point of you speaking?
Yeah.
If your audience is not understanding.
Yeah.
Your role in life is not to be smarter than everybody else. Your role in life is to share information and knowledge.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes. To share information and knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Anneline, thank you so much for joining me today. This has just been so rich, so delicious. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Kat. I really enjoyed being here.
How good was that? Seriously, there is just so much gold in that conversation and so much gold in Anneline's approach. It's her entire approach from the very first moment she started speaking is, how do I make this information? How do I transfer this knowledge? How do I have people understand? the importance of this information, whether it's the farmers, whether it's the industry associations, whether it's the politicians, or whether it's us who are deciding what to put on our plate. That notion that Anneline has of, if a 12-year-old can't understand what I'm saying, then I've missed the point. And it's not about dumbing it down. It's about making the information make sense. Just so ridiculously powerful. And I must admit, I do love that Anneline's top tip was about listening, like getting the insight and thinking about where your audience is at, and listening back to yourself and asking and working with that, continuing to iterate, continuing to practice. The only way you get better at speaking is by, guess what? Speaking. It's not something that you can learn in a theoretical concept. You actually have to get out there and do it. As I said at the top of this conversation, I would love to know what you thought of this episode, what you thought of this conversation, how you, I don't know, were motivated, inspired, stimulated by this conversation. So please head over to my Instagram account @CatMatson, tag me in a post, share a picture, share a screenshot of this episode and tag me in it and let me know your thoughts. All of Anneline's links are in the show notes, so just click on through to follow her on socials, to check out her website, and perhaps even book her for your next conference. If you would like to get your information out into the world, but what gets in your way, please reach out to me and let me help. I help in so many different ways, and whether it's the Impactful Presenters program, whether it's private coaching, there are a lot of different ways that I can help. If you don't already receive my currently semi-irregular newsletter, then head over to impactfulpresenters.com, that's impactfulpresenters.com, and download my free How to Stop Rambling ebook. Not only will you get the ebook, which does exactly what it says on the cover, helps you to stop rambling, you'll also get my newsletters when I do send them out. Alternatively, find me on the socials @CatMatson on Instagram. You can search for my name on all of the other social platforms except for TikTok, and just send me a message. I would love to have a chat. With all of that said, I hope you have an extraordinary day. Whatever it is that you're doing, I hope you're having fun and it's putting a smile on your face. And until I see you next time, here's to confidence and here's to impact.